Here we are today talking about Nintendo Switch 2 editions. The Xenoblade Chronicles X Switch 2 edition game came out a couple weeks ago, and at this point I'm just wondering, what is Nintendo thinking with these Switch 2 editions? Now, early on in this channel's life cycle, a little bit closer to 2025 summer, I was a big critic of Nintendo Switch 2 editions. That was one of the only things that I had come out here and said, yeah, this is a problem. They're very inconsistent. They're not communicating well. And I stick to that. I don't think that they did a good job with their Nintendo Switch 2 editions. I'm not going to recap every single Switch 2 edition here, but if you want to go back and see that video, please click on the top right of your corner after this video is over, because there were so many things wrong with these Switch 2 editions. We got Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Those were fairly decent. They added some smartphone content and also gave us up to 4K and 60 FPS hard stop. Like, those things look and run beautifully now. It's the best way to play those games by far, like bar none. And of course, it wasn't long after that we got ourselves Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 edition, a total train wreck, a complete and total train wreck. That game was disgusting. The content it added in was awful. I mean, that game, it just did not do any favors to any Switch 2 owners. It barely even upgraded anything outside of the new modes that it provided, and the new modes you had to buy stuff for. You had to get the new camera that did not come with the game. You had to buy a $50 to $60 accessory simply to play these new modes, and these modes weren't even that fun, and they weren't very responsive, and it just was a train wreck of a game. Like, why in the world did they ever think this was something that people were going to be interested in? We got Kirby in the Forgotten Land with that Switch 2 edition. That was probably one of the better Switch 2 editions. We got the game up-res to those graphical standards that we now see on the Switch 2, and it gave us a bunch of new content to add about 4 to 5 hours of new stuff to do in that game, which of course is what everybody who has one of those games wants to do, is just to go back to it and play some more. The idea of Switch 2 editions in and of themselves are not bad. I really do think that Switch 2 editions have a lot going for them, especially when you compare them to free upgrades. Like, yes, Mario Odyssey, Scarlet and Violet, I am glad that those games were able to get those free graphical updates, but I just can't compare them to new content. If Mario Odyssey had gotten brand new content, I would have been over the moon excited for that game to replay it. And on the Switch 2 with the new graphics, I am excited for it. Obviously, if I ever decide to go back and replay that game, I will play it on my Switch 2 with those enhancements. But the Switch 2 branding honestly makes me want to buy and makes me want to re-engage with these games. So it's not even the fact that these things exist that I have a problem with. It's the fact that they don't know what they're doing by labeling these things as Switch 2 editions and then giving us free content updates. Really, 2026 has just been a very confusing year for Switch 2 editions already. We got Animal Crossing New Horizons shadow dropped out of nowhere in January, and then boom, we just got a bunch of new content outside of the free update. But the problem is that 3.0 update was free to all players on the Switch and Switch 2. And I'm not saying that it is a problem that it was free. The problem is that they are marketing this as a Switch 2 edition with almost no new features. The new Switch 2 features were, of course, the graphical updates like we have seen with all these other things before, but they added a microphone, the megaphone thing, where the Switch 2 dock, they marketed it back in like April of last year when this thing was releasing, that you could just shout out a villager's name and then they would come running to you, or at least call their name out so you could see where they were. There were some features like that that were very Switch 2 specific. They added mouse controls to be able to move your furniture around in your house or do some artwork with the customization systems that they had in that game. But Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 edition did nothing to give us new content on the Switch 2 exclusively, which is what we have come to understand Switch 2 editions are. The only reason they added a Switch 2 edition to this title was simply to be able to put it on shelves and have the main public eye out there and just look at it and say, oh, a Switch 2 game and it's Animal Crossing, this is the new Animal Crossing, or an upgraded version of the old one. And they would have $65 full in their pockets and they'll say, you know what, I'm going to splurge. I'm going to get this game again for my Switch 2 and maybe even buy a Switch 2 if I don't even know what the heck this is. Sure, the update was only $5 and I'm not at all going to complain about any sort of $5 update that's going to make my game look better, but you can't deny the only reason they decided to put the Switch 2 edition branding on this package was to get casuals to buy it and to get people to get in on the Switch 2. That was literally it. They knew that they weren't going to have a new Animal Crossing game anytime soon, which is what this indicates to me, and they knew we're just going to make the old one on the new one, and we're going to make people go out and buy it because of that. It's honestly their way of putting Wii U ports on the Switch. Now they're doing Switch to the Switch too. It was a great way to build up that library of Switch games early on. Just use old games and brand it new. So from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, yeah, it's kind of genius because they're going to make a lot of more millions on a game that they already produced and made over 6 years ago at this point. So kudos to Nintendo, I guess. And it's not even really a bad deal. I'm not even really complaining about the fact that it's a $5 price tag or $65 for someone buying a new version of it. That's not a big deal to me at all. The big deal is the lack of consistency with this branding. It is so annoying because then you look at Xenoblade Chronicles X, another random shadow drop in February of a Switch 2 edition. It gave us a trailer and it said 4K, 60 FPS. That's it. Didn't even add any new content, nothing specific to the Switch 2. It was even lazier than the Animal Crossing Switch 2 edition. It was simply more games on the Switch 2, but up in 4K from the old system. Like, what are we doing here with these Switch 2 labels? This is simply a free upgrade that you're charging for $5. And the biggest sin with Xenoblade Chronicles X, Definitive Edition, Switch 2 Edition, long name, is the fact that it doesn't even work right. Like, for some people, it has been totally fine. In my experience, I thought the game looked okay. It looked good. The 60 FPS was gorgeous. The resolution is wonky. There's something going on with that. There's like a weird shimmering effect going on. If you want to know more about that, watch that Digital Foundry video. They always break down these games very well. But the game just has some issues that I can't believe that they just were able to put this out the door and say, yeah, it's fine. Because clearly it's not fine. There's something wrong with Xenoblade Chronicles X Switch 2 Edition. There's something going on in the code itself. And sure, the good thing is it could be patched, it could be fixed, but it doesn't look good for Xenoblade games in the future. Because if Monolith Soft did this, oh boy, this is the first time that they've put out a game that, in my opinion, that would actually be considered a bad upgrade. And the thing that really does suck about this is that people went out and bought it. Like, when Xenoblade Chronicles X released on the Switch a year ago, people were saying, we'll wait for the Switch 2 edition, because obviously there's going to be one. In the code, we found that it was 4K, 60 FPS output. It's going to be there eventually. So people are actually buying this, and now some people are going to see that this is the problem. They're going to notice that, and they're going to say, yikes, maybe I shouldn't have bought this, and maybe I'll never give Xenoblade a chance ever again. Which, if you know me, if you know anything about my channel, you know I'm a big Xenoblade fan, so that makes me really sad to see. If Monolith Soft did this, there's something wrong there, and I know that maybe there's a chance they outsourced to some other studio, or maybe this was done by some brand new employees. I have no idea what that looks like, but if we are going to get any sort of Xenoblade 1, 2, or 3 upgrade on the Switch 2, I hope that they have learned from this. I hope that those games don't end up like this again, that we don't have this drama all over again, because that's the last thing the Xenoblade series needs, is controversy. So I hope by now that you've noticed that there is all kinds of issues with these Switch 2 editions, and none of them are the same. They all have different issues. Xenoblade Chronicles X adds no extra content and charges you $5. Animal Crossing New Horizons adds you like 2 new features that most people aren't going to use at all, exclusive to the Switch 2, charges you $5, sure, whatever. Then you get stuff that's like 20 extra bucks, like Kirby, and you get a bunch of brand new story content and a bunch of brand new levels to play. Then of course Mario Party Jamboree tried to justify its price point by giving us new content, but that had problems with the accessories and then the graphics itself. We talked about that earlier. And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, another new weird thing. Like, none of these have been the same. This is the only time that we've seen smartphone stuff be added to this, just to simply add on that Switch 2 edition and say, yeah, we added new content. It's inconsistent, it's a mess, it's a problem, and I have the solution. This is what Nintendo Switch 2 editions should be moving forward, because I try not to give any sort of big criticism without also trying to give some sort of solution. So number one, I understand that the games that have already released cannot be undone. That is just going to have to be a weird stain on Nintendo's history, and we just have to move forward from that because there's nothing we can do about it. But moving forward, what can we do? Moving forward, Switch 2 editions need to be like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. They just have to be. For consistency's sake, having the base game be upgraded in terms of its graphics and then giving us brand new content for the Switch 2, that's the easiest and most accessible way for us to understand what these things are. And they are doing that perfectly well with Mario Wonder and Meetup at Bella Bell Park. They did a whole presentation on Nintendo Treehouse, so that way you couldn't be confused about what this was. It's brand new content and of course, graphical upgrades. And I kind of wonder if we're seeing from Mario Wonder here and Bella Bell Park, if they are kind of turning a corner with Switch 2 editions. The Xenoblade Xenoblade Chronicles X thing makes me think maybe not, but at the same time, if you see something like Bell Park, you're going to understand what that is. It's the plus. They're very clearly marketing it as that, and we've seen in Nintendo's history a lot of different games with that plus, like Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. People understand it means an older game with a new mode or new content to add on top of it. It makes a lot of sense to people. And that honestly is really what I'm going for here. We just need consistency. We just need the Switch 2 Edition moniker to mean something, because right now it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. If you give me a bunch of random Switch 2 editions put right in front of me and you don't tell me which game those Switch 2 editions go to, you just give me all the Switch 2 editions, and it's a big gamble, and I just have to pick one, and whichever one I get, that's the one I have. I would hate to do that. And I think almost anyone watching this video would hate to do that as well, because you have no clue what it is you're getting. You are clearly going to be getting an inferior product if you get something like Xenoblade X or Animal Crossing compared to Meet Up at Bell Park or even Kirby Forgotten Land. It's simply just worse because we don't have more content. Now, sure, it does match in terms of price point, which I will absolutely give kudos to Nintendo for that. They could easily have charged 20 extra bucks and $80 total for all of these things, and people would have been way too upset at that, and I would have been upset at that as well. But as long as that Switch 2 Edition branding is there, it's going to make sense for people if it's the same price point. So at least they're doing that variable pricing. So that would be my first change. Of course, you need to change it to where everything is consistent. $20 across the board, new content across the board. Okay, well then we get into the territory of dual platform releases and those things being a little bit confusing. What if I want to release Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4 on both consoles? Why would I not just call it a Switch 2 Edition if it is just going to be that? Well, that is where we get into an issue here. I'm just going to say you don't do that. I know that is disadvantageous towards Nintendo and towards everything that they want to give us. Having a Pokemon game be on the shelf for the Switch 1 and then not have the Switch 2 box, that can be confusing to people. But at the same time, you just put the dang thing from the Switch 1 into your Switch 2. Give us a free upgrade with those Switch 2 Edition specific ones, and then you don't have to worry about it. It's the same across the board. Pokemon Legends ZA, in my opinion, should not have gotten a Switch 2 Edition. It should have had that one box for Switch 1 sales, Switch 1 stuff. You put it in your Switch 2 and you get an upgrade for it. Nintendo might lose out on a little bit of money, on a little bit of customer service there, because some people are only going to Switch 2 and think, oh, it's definitely a Switch 2. This is different. This is a brand new game. But at the same time, you just got to be able to respect the customer enough to figure it out themselves and to give them a good deal. And I think this is a much better deal than the alternative of just having it on the shelf and it being confusing and the box art being gross. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It is a great looking game and it looks better on the Switch 2. So I understand that they wanted to give those boxes a big Switch 2 push. That way people would buy it on the Switch 2. But you don't have to do that. The Switch 1 has 150 plus million people. It is the best selling Nintendo console ever. Let the people on the Switch 1 buy it, then let the Switch 2 people figure it out. Some people might say that Nintendo would never do this. Well, my argument back to you is that they kind of already did do that with those big batch of free upgrades right when the Switch 2 launched. Mario Odyssey, Scarlet and Violet, I believe even Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, a bunch of other games. Eventually Splatoon 3 got an upgrade. Those games didn't get Switch 2 boxes. Like, we all understand the fact that they wanted to give those upgrades simply for people to play those games on the Switch 2. Some people might be buying Switch 2s for the first time. They might see that big Switch 1 library, want to get in on that stuff that they missed out on, and see, oh, free upgrades. Now, sure, one could argue those were specifically for people coming over from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, but I don't think you can say that. I think if it's going out there, I think people are going to be able to figure it out themselves. Switch 2 owners are going to be able to get those games, and boom, free upgrade. This is all for the sake of more consistent branding for Switch 2 editions to be better. And lastly, my big change to make Switch 2 editions better moving forward is to cut out all this name garbage, like all this weird crap that you have. Just put whatever the title of the game was before and Switch 2 Edition. You can have the modes continue to be called whatever they are, like Meet Up at Bell Park, without putting it in the title itself. It's confusing. It's hard to understand. Like, I talked earlier about those plus signs. Like, sure, people do understand what those mean, but at the same time, if you have a game, a subtitle, and then a Switch 2 Edition, there's too much going on. I think Switch 2 Edition is simple enough for people to understand, hey, this game has new content, especially under my new regime of Ray's brand new Nintendo leadership. All of these Switch 2 editions are consistent now. People know that they come with new content, so you don't have to shove it in their face what this content is actually called. Make it simple, make it easy, $20 across the board, brand new content. Then you don't have to put on the box Switch 2 edition. You don't have to do that at all. Just release the ones in terms of dual platform releases on the Switch 1, give them free upgrades moving forward, and with that third change, you're going to make sure that those names aren't confusing. Simply the game itself, Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 edition. So I am losing my voice and I feel really bad, and it is hoodie day and it is rainy and tired. So I am going to wrap up this video right here. Switch 2 editions are weird and confusing, and I just had to throw another punch right back at him. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, make sure you leave a comment. Let me know all of your thoughts. If there are any big changes you would make to the Switch 2 system that maybe I did not think about. Make sure you like, subscribe, click that notification bell, and join the membership program to support me as a content creator and get a couple of cool perks for yourself. It really does matter, and I appreciate you so much. Make sure you click on the left side of your screen to see my Switch 2 edition video from last year that I was complaining about all this, and if you want to go in more depth on why each Switch 2 edition was bad before this, and click on the right side of your screen to see my video covering the Pokemon Wind and Wave news and what it means for 2026 holiday game. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.